just feeling on top of the world. Like there was something missing in me where like I needed to feel that, and
Yeah, well, I'm sitting here watching you talk about it, and if I'm being honest, I can tell that even though it was a tough time, there's a certain amount of almost joy about talking about it. Almost, I don't want to say joy, but I can tell that you remember that euphoric feeling that you were feeling
because it was before life became unmanageable. Like I think you had said it. It's like you're an adolescent. You're coming into your own anyway. You're starting to figure things out, and then you're taking your serotonin and dopamine levels like way beyond what you should normally be feeling at that age. So.
Yeah, yeah.
So not only am I like exposed to new and exciting things with girls, puberty, whatever, but man, I'm like taking it to the next level, and that's how I'm just built. That's how I'm programmed. Like it's never enough. Like I just need more.
Okay.
And
so after experiencing the club scene and some of those drugs, were you just using at that point? Were you selling? What was the next step, if you will?
My first foray into selling drugs was a complete catastrophe. Okay, so like 8th grade, maybe 9th grade. This was during my urban days. My gangster days, my FUBU days. I link up with a couple kids from the basketball team, and we're all young and dumb, right? So like. We find the most like gangster kid out of all of us, which there's none, right? But like, he's got connections to people in the cities and stuff, and again, mind you, we're like in 8th, 9th grade. So like, we all pool like whatever money we have together because we're not working at that point. I don't know where allowance money or whatever, and we buy, I don't know if it was, I don't remember the amount, but like, so we buy like this big bag of weed, and I remember like us having to like schedule the times when to bag it up and stuff, and it's absolute crap, dude. It's like filled with stems and seeds. So like we got them to where like we each maybe had like 30 dime bags, and we went our separate ways. We were gonna sell it after school and in the bathrooms and whatever. And I remember like getting home with it underneath my shirt, and like I didn't make it 2 feet into my bedroom, and like back then there's like a no locked door policy,
Mm-hmm.
So mom comes in to get the laundry or something, and boom, it just falls right out. Like, and like I think she was shocked too because she turned around and closed the door, and then within seconds was back in there. She's like, "Give me that now," So like. Oh, it was a catastrophe. And so, like, I remember having to recover that money because even back then, they're like, we want our money. You know what I mean? Like, my friends did what they could, but, like, they came out of the city and rolled up on my house. We're like, where's our money, And so, like, having to come up with that. But I think it was a couple of years. I don't think I got back into selling until, like, senior year where, like, we were moving some of the pills, like, not anything big. I mean, we were just selling to help friends out and stuff like that, or maybe buying 20 pills and getting 3 or 4 free out of it, so we could have fun that night. But, I wasn't attached to it at that point. It was more like I just was having fun and starting to come into my own, and it was new and exciting. And I mean, I don't know. I think that need to feel valid, like it's still something I work on today. Like, being that guy that everyone called, like, hey, are we going to Gotham City tonight? Or are we going down to Marcella's? Are you going to get us into VIP? And then once we get into VIP, everyone knows you because of your cousin, and, like, you're hanging out. Like, and there was other people. Like, we might have been 9th and 10th grade, but the seniors were also going. There was a whole, like, club movement that was going on at that time. So seeing seniors there, right? And then they're starting to give us some respect. And then seeing them at school and just kind of, like, having that unspoken bond. Like, yeah, I know what you were doing. I seen you, and... man, I felt important. So clearly there was something missing within me that I needed that because, I don't know.
So, I mean, it was more than just the feeling of what the drugs were giving you then. It was that whole culture that you started to get obsessed with, it sounds like. Yes. Is that fair?
Yes, right. I think that's fair.
Yeah. So here we are. You're in 10th grade. You're going to be in the senior... at this point, you don't realize that this could be the start of problems for you. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Actually, a funny part here that I do want to add is, of all the years I was in high school, my senior year is the only year that I made high honor roll, and that was probably the year that I jerked off the most. That probably sounds bad. That was the year that I partied the most. Like,
Gotcha.
I probably did that as well too. But
well, you were a senior in high school, so but we will not talk into that too much more because
that was the year that I definitely partied the most. Like, I remember going into class, tripping off acid, like getting drunk and smoking a blunt daily before we went. And we had a ritual where we drove down. Rochester is actually pretty scenic, especially around Irondequoit. So, like, you've got the Duran Parkway coming up through the golf courses along the Lake Ontario. And, man, just going in blazed, And, like, I made honor roll. I don't know. I was always good at school, Like, I never really applied myself because I could just get by. Like, people today tell me when I'm at school, they're like, you can just get by without doing any work. Well, but if I applied myself, how much
so here's an interesting story about that. They actually they've done some studies and such, and there's a certain percentage of people with high IQs that they will realize early on that they do not have to work hard to please the people around them and please the people that they are, and it does affect pretty much everything in how you operate life. Once you realize that you don't have to work hard to maintain those grades and such, you kind of get on that path. I suffer from that exact same thing. I remember a story. I would go to college and there was a continuing ed student there, and she would be like, "Hey, did you study for the test?" I'd be like, "Oh, we have a test today? Shit." I'd flip through my notes. I'd get like a 94, she'd get a 97. She'd be like, "Hey, I beat you." I said, "Well, we both got an A, so does it really matter?" So I totally understand that, and I think that what you're saying is that mindset that some people have. Yes,
the mindset, just minus the
IQ. I don't know. That's what they say, and it sounds like from what you're saying, there's going to be
really good at manipulating people and the gift of gab. I definitely have that. I don't know where the IQ comes in, but the gift of gab.
All right, well, fine, you're a dumbass and whatever.
But I can talk real well.
But you talk real well, so we're okay with that. But anyways, back to your story. I just thought that was an interesting thing when you started saying that. I could relate to that for sure. Now, at this point, some people are going to be like, "Wow, you can see the downward spiral from the outside." You're telling this story. A very, very small percentage of high school students are going to be tripping when they're in class.
Or they don't admit to it.
Or, well, I think in general, it's not. Yeah. There are going to be those that are, but I don't think that that's going to be the majority.
And I mean, it's interesting because through some of the opportunities in this community, with like Heal and Nick's Ride and the police department, we've gone out and spoke at the high schools. Mm-hmm. And so, like, we each give our little spiel, and I remember asking like a room full of like 70 students. I'm like, okay, so like who in here is depressed? Ton of hands go up. Mm-hmm. Who in here gets anxious? Ton of hands go up. Who in here gets bullied? A ton of hands go up. I'm like, okay, who in here drinks and drugs? And no hands go up. And I'm like, I'm in a room full of liars today. Right?
Right.
But like, man, the stuff that's out there in the high schools now, like that's a big reason why I do what I do, because it's not just the drugs. I mean, it's not just the weed or the alcohol or the jewels. Like, they're into some heavy stuff today, and I feel for them because, man, like, I wasn't exposed to that, and we'll get into it, but I wasn't exposed to that later on. But as you said, the downward spiral, we're starting down the toilet bowl here, it sounds like, and but I still had plans, like I from graduation going to college, like I had, again, a good relationship. I had a good core group of guys at this point, my friends, and of course we all are on the same level. Again, the disease isn't just progressive in nature, but like it progressive with our relationship. So like I had 20 people, as I mentioned in the beginning, that would like drink occasionally. Mm-hmm. And then like I had 15 people that would drink and smoke pot. And by senior year, I've got like 6 or 7 close homies that are drinking, smoking pot, but we're getting ripped on the club drugs every weekend, and like those are my dudes, because those are the dudes that are going at the level I'm going at,
Right.
But I still had a plan, like graduated, walked the stage. Parents were excited, grandparents were excited. And then like I broke up with this girl. Like for people that know athletics, like I had a scholarship to a Division III basketball school. Like I was a pretty good basketball player. We were a really small team, but like and that's not like NCAA, but it was a full ride for school to be paid for had I maintained and been accountable to what they were saying, and I could have got to play some basketball. Totally gave that away. That was to Orlando University down in Florida, and I stuck around a couple months for this girl because I was in love and like I needed her to feel valid too. But so I ended up going to Orlando anyway for an internship in Walt Disney World.
Okay. And we were talking a little bit about that before the show. This is where you started experimenting with even some of the harder drugs.
Sure.
And it sounds like this is where if there was a point where the downward spiral really, really started and things started to not go your way in life, would you say in Florida is where it's at? And
I think prior to Florida and everything behind Florida were like the two first major traumas in my life that I've carried with me, and gave me the perfect excuses to use further down the road.
Right.
One being the breakup because like again this was like I was with her from like 8th or 9th grade right up to senior year. Again, that codependency living strong, and I thought we were gonna get married and do the whole ride. So that breakup was my reason to run to Florida. I was like, okay, well if I can't play basketball, at least I can apply for this scholarship program. And again, like 200-300 people from Monroe Community College applied, and only like 12 of us got chosen to go work at Walt Disney World. So I'm like, great, new and exciting. I can get out of Rochester, start over. And then I get to Florida, I think me and my buddy, one other like friend got accepted. So we drove down there, and like, it's awesome, man. They put you up in like these beautiful apartments. Like, it's like Real World. I don't know if anyone's ever watched that show from MTV, but there's like 6 strangers living in a house, and it's an amazing house, like better than anything I'd been exposed to at that point. But this is, again, like the summer that I graduated high school, so there was no, like, downtime. So I'm in Florida, and, like, within the first night or two, we're having these parties. And you got to remember, there are young adults from all over the country. There's people from New Jersey. So the people that lived right above us from New Jersey, and, like, they get down in New Jersey, apparently, because they were like, yo, come upstairs and try this. And, that's where I was introduced to cocaine. And, I had no experience with that at that point. Again, it's not like I just went from like smoking cigarettes to cocaine. Like those club drugs were pretty intense too. But
right,
this was something like the club drugs were like a weekend specialty. Like I wasn't doing ecstasy during the week and going to work. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Coke was a little bit more manageable, where I could fit it into anything that I was doing.
Okay, so that's one of the drugs that you started using like throughout the day, consistently.
And like it got to the point where again, like, I enjoyed drinking to a certain extent, and the problem, and I think people get confused with an addict. I certainly was. I used to always say I'm not an alcoholic because I don't have to wake up every day and drink when I get out of bed in the morning. Like alcohol and drugs or whatever, if it makes my life unmanageable, there's a problem. So like I just want to be clear that like I never was a person that drank every day. But every time I drank, shit happened. Like, I had 3 DWIs before I was even 21. Mm-hmm. I would drink and black out. I would drink once a month sometimes, but I would black out. But, like, so alcohol was replaced by cocaine. Like, I no longer I just would drink to get started, and then Coke would finish out the rest of the night,
Mm-hmm. Okay. And when you were in Florida, you were saying that you were close to your grandparents, mm-hmm. and there was a tragedy that happened for you. And it seems to me, with what you were saying about that deeply affected you.
Yes. So that was the other trauma that I think that really, hit me around that same time. So like the Florida program started in late August when I got down there, and like as soon as I got down there, end of August, early September, started getting phone calls from back home that my grandfather had been hospitalized and they were keeping an eye on it. And again, just to be clear, like it was me, my mother, my father, and my mother's parents. So like a very close knit family vacation. Always, spending weeks with my grandparents at times. It was very close. But we started getting reports that, he had been hospitalized. And my mom's like, I don't want you to worry. I want you to focus on school. Because, like, part of the internship was attending class down at the resort, but also working. We'll keep you in the loop on what's going on. And, I don't know if I'd mentioned it now or when we were talking before, but I was always just closer with my mother and my grandmother. You know, they'd give me whatever I want.
Yeah. You were saying you could pat those eyes and